Whenever a solid cartoon series peaks in popularity, some Hollywood suit with a fluffy cat swivels toward his fireplace, swirls his long handlebar mustache and declares, "I must make this beloved animation into a movie using real actors, excessive CGI, and zero regard for source material." That's the origin story for The Last Airbender. And Dragon Ball Evolution. And Garfield. Look, the list goes on. Rarely do you ever find a live-action movie that actually improves upon the original cartoon that inspired it, but it does happen. Hey everyone, I'm Johnny with Cinematica, and today we're tracking down those diamond-in-the-rough films that actually improved upon their cartoon version. A little transparency to start off, though this list was not easy. There's a reason that cartoons are made as cartoons, but with the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, the fourth Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, and the upcoming barrage of Disney movie adaptations, we've all got to start looking on the bright side. So, as the old saying goes, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. We're gonna be super nice. So get ready because Cinematica is counting down the 8 live-action movies that were better than the cartoons. Let's get started. Number 8. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The most iconic example of a live-action cartoon is also the best example. Now, Roger Rabbit wasn't adapted from one cartoon in particular. In fact, it famously featured animated all-stars from several franchises, including Betty Boop, Dumbo, Mickey Mouse, and Bugs Bunny, and introduced the now infamously adored Jessica Rabbit. I always say 2 tunes are better than 1. Well, I mean, that's the first time I've said that, but I'll say that again. This movie had them all, and dropped them in the underbelly of Toontown. In addition to being totally original at the time of its release, Roger Rabbit managed to preserve everything we already loved about that age of animation, from the unadulterated slapstick to the unexpected moments of heart. It was also the precursor to several other animated and live-action hybrid films, including Space Jam and the Looney Tunes Back in Action, which I'm now realizing no one seems to ever talk about anymore. In 2003? Remember? Starred Brendan Fraser? Weird. Number 7. Scooby-Doo the movie. Okay, so looking back on it, the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie hasn't aged particularly well. Though, you have to admit, outdated early 2000 CGI aside, this movie had a lot going for it. For starters, the casting of Matthew Lillard as Shaggy was absolutely on point and was so good that even the future cartoon series took a hint and hired him. Not just that, but the movie didn't have any issues with poking fun at its cartoon counterparts. We got a few gems out of that, from Shaggy confessing his love of marijuana, when the girl says, "I'm Mary Jane," and he's like, "That's like my favorite name, dude," to the gang finally acknowledging how obnoxious of an addition Scrappy-Doo was. The casting isn't half bad either, and the movie gets extra points for enlisting Buffy the Vampire Slayer herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar, as Daphne Blake, taking her reputation as danger-prone Daphne and turning it right on its head. The Scooby-Doo cartoons are still classics, but we'll confess that the live-action movie has its one-up moments. Number 6. George of the Jungle. The original George of the Jungle TV series first aired in 1967, one of a handful created by Jay Ward. Others include The Rocky and Bullwinkle Show and Dudley Do-Right, both of which also got live-action adaptations, and neither of which made this list. Sorry, guys. And if Dudley Do-Right did make the list, that would be the 3rd time we would mention a Brendan Fraser movie in one sitting. This should just be like the 8 cartoon movies that Brendan Fraser made. But seriously, I miss Brendan Fraser, like, a lot. Anywho, since the original George cartoon aired way back in the late 60s and the movie was released in 1997, many young viewers were unaware of the series when they first saw the film. So for plenty of us millennials who look at the 90s with rose-colored nostalgia glasses, the movie will always be the most definitive George of the Jungle, and besides, with the campy tone, wisecracking narrator, and a consistent decimation of the fourth wall, what's not to love, especially considering that the original series hasn't aged the best, unlike Brendan Fraser, who still looks incredible. Number 5. Alice in Wonderland. If there was one person we trust to take the beloved Alice in Wonderland animated movie, modernize it, and make it live action, it'd be Tim Burton. His adaptation made waves when it was released, becoming one of the highest-grossing movies of all time. It even beat out the Disney version and earned a sequel that's due out in just a few months. The success of the movie was in no small part a result of Burton's obvious stylization of the brand, which turned out to be a match made in heaven, or at least a match made in Hot Topic. The movie's trippy, Burton-esque sensibilities were exactly what Alice needed to simultaneously pay homage to the cartoon yet break away and establish itself as a different beast. In fact, the tonal difference from the Disney classic is so notable that the two take on different identities. So whether you think this live-action return to Wonderland was better than the cartoon or not, you're still right. Number 4. Transformers. Say what you will about Michael Bay's explosion-saturated plot-light quadrilogy of movies, that's it. Just say what you will about them. For the most part, they're pretty bad. I mean, Did you see the fourth one? For some reason, a lot of people inexplicably did, but that's besides the point. Let's take a trip back to the distant land of 2007 when the very first Transformers movie hit screens. Flaunting top-notch effects, an A-list director, and the return of Peter Cullen, it was the spark, the allspark, that the franchise desperately needed to get back into the mainstream, which is the goal of these adaptations in the first place. Also, the Transformers never looked more badass. Rather than using the wonky pseudo-cartoon CGI look that most adaptations go for, the Transformers designers meticulously calculated how the Autobots and Decepticons would look based on their vehicle versions, ensuring that every nut and bolt found a home. And that's more than the cartoons ever attempted. Number 3. G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra. Hey, while we're on the topic of toys turned into cartoons turned into movies, the 2009 G.I. Joe movie The Rise of Cobra gave the old soldiers the Transformers treatment, a high-octane, action-packed leap into the 21st century. The cartoon series from the 80s was pretty much part toy commercial, part American propaganda, neither of which make for a particularly fun blockbuster thriller. When director Steven Sommers got his hands on the franchise, he decided to take more cues from the comics. Yes, there were also comics, which had more drama and more humor than the show. Now, the movie did get largely meh reviews, but it made a pretty hefty amount at the box office anyway, meaning we can write this one off into the mindless fun category. And here's a little fact. Guess who has a cameo as Sergeant Stone in the movie? Our very good friend Brendan Fraser. I know. And knowing is half the battle. Number 2, Speed Racer. The Speed Racer anime is legendary. Unfortunately, the biggest part of that legacy as of late are the poorly dubbed, manic shout matches between the characters. The Wachowskis tackled the property in 2008, and they took all the coolest, fastest, and flashiest elements from the show and turned them up to Mach 5. The result? A psychedelic thrill ride of eye candy that feels just like watching a real-life cartoon. Now, the movie didn't perform particularly well in theaters, but there's something of a cult following that considers a movie an unappreciated masterpiece, citing its quirky sense of humor, subtle political tones, and John Goodman. Everyone loves John Goodman. He is the best. I mean, almost as good as Brendan Fraser, but he's pretty good too. Number 1. RoboCop. Okay, so technically, this one might be cheating. The success of the classic 80s crime thriller is what inspired the animated series, not the other way around. But man, is the live-action movie better than the cartoon. When you look at all the notoriously bad live-action adaptations, the leading cause of their notorious badness is a failure to translate the message and the charm of the source material to a new platform. So let's take a look at RoboCop's message and charm. Over-the-top depictions of violence, the dangers of capitalism, philosophy of identity, biblical allegories, and questions of the human nature like, would you buy that for $1? The animated series, on the other hand, aimed to be a kid's show. They toned down the gritty realism in favor of a more sci-fi tone, which included turning the bullet guns into laser guns. To be fair, the series did have some darker themes given its audience, but you can't just take the guns out of RoboCop. To do that, you'd have to be some kind of airhead, like the airheads in the movie Airheads starring Brendan Fraser. Thanks for watching the 8 live-action movies better than the cartoons. Which live-action adaptations did you like better than the cartoon? Would you add any more to the list? Were we just way off base with some of these? And what are some Brendan Fraser movies that you enjoyed? Let us know in the comments, and if you liked this video, check out the other videos by clicking the annotations below. You can follow me on Twitter at JohnnyKisAOK, and if you love getting more out of your movies and TV shows, be sure to subscribe to Cinematica, where we help you watch smarter.